Good afternoon, everybody. The topics that we are going to cover here is the policy support, challenges in achieving 20% ethanol blending in the fuel by 2025, why biofuels will provide for a better environment, development in flex fuel engine technology, consumer awareness campaigns for promoting ethanol, R&D adaptation required in automobile to meet E100 requirement and role of research institutions. Let me introduce you to our speakers. They have joined from Brazil, Professor Goncalo Pereira, and Mr. M.S. Patke, Melinda Patke, who has joined from US. The rest of them are from India. So a brief introduction about all of them. Dr. Sangeeta Srivastav, Executive Director in Biofuel Limited. He has been associated with the company for more than 25 years, managing and directing research activities concerned with renewable feedstock. She holds 19 patents, and many of these have been filed in various foreign jurisdictions. We have Mr. Roshan Lal Tamak. He is the Executive Director and CEO of Sugar Business, DCM Sriram Limited, one of the, what we can say, great contributors to the sugar industry as well as to the ethanol industry. He brings with him more than 3 decades of distinguished professional experience of leading large organizations towards strategic growth in the Indian sugar sector. So welcome, Mr. Mr. Avinash Verma, promoter, Eastern India Biofuels Limited. He comes with a very varied background. And if I look at his brief profile, he has looked at sugar and ethanol policy from close quarters, from 2005 to 10, when he served in the Ministry of Food and Public Distribution, Government of India as director, played a crucial role in introducing and mandatory 5% ethanol blending in 2007. He worked as Director General Indian Sugar Mills Association, ISMA, from 2010 to 22, from where he worked for a favorable and sugar and ethanol policies. Then, so from the government to the association, and then as a manufacturer, in April 2022, he set up one of the first fully dedicated greenfield grain-based ethanol plant in Bihar. So, Mr. Avinash Verma. Professor Goncalo Pereira, he has led several high-level commissions in the area of industrial biotechnology, both in the public and private sectors. He was one of the creators and founders of Grain Bio, the first 2G ethanol company in the Southern Hemisphere. So, another pioneering efforts from Brazil, and India lead the sugar story. So he would be a valuable addition on our panel. And Melinda Patke, he was on a, that we can say, more of a leisure trip, but we caught hold of him to US, and so he retired from BPCL as Executive Director Biofuels, after rendering experience in Petroleum Corporation Limited. Under his leadership, BPCL established the first level 2G ethanol plant at Bargarh, Odisha. The plant is also integrated or would be integrating with a 1G ethanol facility, and he is presently President Biofuels GPS Renewables Private Limited. So with this background, let me share some statistics which will make this session interesting. Being the last session, I want to make this session more interesting. So that will help our audience to at least gauge the kind of activity that this industry is doing. Let me give you some statistics. India's share in global sugar production is 19%, whereas India's share in global ethanol production is 2%. So India has set a target of 20% blending by 2025. Presently, we are at 10% ethanol blending, and we achieved 5 months before the deadline. So I hope even the 20% blending deadline would be achieved before 2025. So from 2% in 2014 to 10% in 2022. So reduced carbon emissions is by 2.7 million tons, and we have saved for forex of rupees 41,000 crores is what an estimation is all about. With this little background, let me straight away jump into the panel discussion and uh, uh, let me ask Sangeeta ma'am how she is looking. Let me get a brief 60 seconds overview from everybody and then jump. So how do you look at this energy of future? The question for all remains the same. Ethanol, biofuel, energy of future. Your 60 seconds, Dr. Sangeeta Srivastava.
Yeah, thank you, Prashant, for setting the stage. And you actually left at the right point where you said like India has achieved the target of 10% ethanol blending 5 months ahead of the time, and it has saved the forex and GHG emission. So that's a great achievement. So which also sets the right tone. And I think some data which I was looking at ISMA, which talks about that ethanol blending, like the current year, we're talking about almost 1,430 crores liter. Sorry, the current year that will be around 819 crores liters. By 24-25, will reach to 1,430 crore liter. Now, this all is happening only because we have this aggressive, like kind of a policy, which makes it happen. Apart from interest subvention and ethanol capacity addition, and besides this EBP program, actually EPP program I see as a real booster for this biofuel industry. India is one of the fastest growing economy and the third largest consumer of primary energy in the world after US and China. So we can understand how important its energy security is. And it will remain vulnerable until we have alternate fuels and we have developed those technologies of renewable application. It's very critical. I look at this program as very strategic and it is very important for the nation here. I
Thank
hope
you,
I-
ma'am. Dr. Lal Tabaki, your 60-second views on biofuel energy of future.
So basically, just to supplement what Sangeeta has just mentioned, this is a sunrise sector and the need of the hour and a win-win situation for all stakeholders. From sugar industry standpoint, I would like to specifically mention that sugar sector, the backbone of this program will continue to be the sugarcane sector in future also and in present also. From government side, I must compliment that government has put in all building blocks in terms of policy framework. Some fine tuning is required here and there, but otherwise all set to be accelerated. And sugarcane sector will play a pivotal role in accelerating this program.
Thank you, sir. Avinash ji, you were the first ones to operate your factory in Bihar, the ethanol-based factory. So your 60-second views, sir.
Yeah, first of all, I think we should congratulate the government of India because the whole ethanol policy that they are pursuing in India is based on 4 or 5 very important pillars. First of all, it directly benefits the farmers in the country because their sugarcane gets a better price, their maize or corn gets a better price, they find a market for that. The broken rice gets a market, rice husk gets a market. So the farmers directly benefit from the ethanol blending program. Second important pillar is that the government of India is trying to support its own domestic sugar industry by diverting the surplus sugar into ethanol. Thirdly, it reduces environmental pollution because that extra oxygen which is contained in ethanol helps the balance fossil fuel burn much better and therefore reduces vehicular pollution. Fourth is, as you correctly mentioned, it reduces that foreign exchange, the very crucial foreign exchange, reduces your net oil import bill and improves your self-dependence on energy, on the transport vehicle fuel. And fifthly, it gives you a chance to generate more and more employment within the country. Now, very, very important, the government of India has also fixed the prices of ethanol. It has not linked it to the crude oil prices. It has not linked it to the petrol prices, but has decided to link the ethanol prices to the raw material prices like the maize price or the sugarcane price or the sugar price or the rice price. And that is what is actually taking this whole program, giving that stability and a vision to the Indian investors. Thank you.
Thank you, Avinashi. Professor Goncalo Pereira, your views on ethanol, biofuel, energy of the future, and I would like you to touch upon both Brazil perspective as well as some flavor of international perspective also.
Yeah. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I believe that India is really a very important partner for Brazil. Brazil and India can really play a very important role in decarbonization through the biofuel. As you know, in 70s, when we got these enormous oil prices, Brazil began a policy, but it was not a specific policy to a given sector, but really a policy that touched in several different areas, because the opportunity that we have with the biofuels is not because biofuel is just a specific thing. This is the basis of an enormous value chain that begins in the field with all the jobs that it can create, and goes to the end, to the motorization. If Brazil today has the automobile industry, and we are maybe the only country in South America where you have automobile development, it's because the ethanol. That means ethanol is not only a biofuel to capture CO2, but also to improve the high technology industry. And now in the case, I believe that the future of the ethanol is to be converted in electricity through the fuel cells, where I see India has a huge opportunity because of the strength of the automobile industry. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Professor Goncalo. Milind sir, your views on how to see ethanol fuel as energy of future? Mr. Milind Patke? Hello. Let me, before he joins in, I think there is some problem. So before he joins in, let me move to the second part, and which is the challenges in achieving 20% ethanol blending in fuel by 2025. Let me get views from Roshan Lalji, and then move to other speakers.
Yeah. So basically, the challenges of feedstock as offtake is not an issue, and necessary framework regarding pricing, etc., has also been put into place. So from sugar, as on date, if you see, this year, sugar industry has diverted about 3.5 million tons sugar to ethanol. And this year, overall basis, country has witnessed a sugar production of approximately 40 million ton. Out of 40 million ton, 3.5 million ton has been diverted to ethanol. This year, in the coming season, about 5 million ton will be diverted in the form of B-heavy and juice. Even after accounting that, we are left with a surplus of about 7 to 8 million ton, because consumption in the country is estimated to be in the range of 27 and a half. And this year also we shall be producing about 40 million ton. So broadly, if you see, 40 million ton, 39 to 40 million ton is the production, sugar production. As on in the coming season, 5 million we shall be diverting. And after that, we are left with a surplus about 7 to 8 million ton. Now there are two avenues to liquidate this surplus sugar. One is export, and second is ethanol. Obviously, from overall perspective, ethanol is the preferred route. And that's why I told in my initial opening remarks that sugar industry is well placed to fill this gap. And this juice to ethanol is a very, very quick solution. And we are in a position to divert more and more sugar to ethanol. And capacity is being added. And we shall be seeing the result in the times to come. As far as challenges are concerned, very quickly touching upon the challenges. So main challenge is that there are regional variations of in sugarcane price and sugar price due to various issues, basically due to statutory region and market conditions. So due to that, in certain parts of the country, that economic viability of juice to ethanol price is not there. So policymakers need to take a cognizance of the same and develop a policy framework regarding pricing of juice to ethanol so that it is viable for all the sugar mills, and then it will certainly accelerate the whole process. Two other minor challenges, one is transportation and second is storage capacity augmentation. On those fronts, government is already taking action. So I don't see a major challenge, but of course, these areas requires focus. And the larger focus, of course, this automobile industry need to respond. On that front also, government also and automobile industry is also responding. So as such, not a major challenge, but things are moving in the right direction.
So according to you, it would be achievable for us to meet the deadline within the time frame.
So just to elaborate, just in terms of numbers, 1 million ton sugar is equivalent to 60 crore liter ethanol. So say, for example, if we are able to divert another 5 million ton, hypothetically, so approximately 300 crore liter ethanol can be produced. And of course, some supplementing will be done by grain-based distilleries also. So from that perspective, I don't see that there will be a major challenge.
Sangeeta ma'am, your views?
So what I think as a challenge is surely like we have achieved 10%, so it gives us a confidence that okay, 20% is achievable. But going forward, when we look at the divergence and other things, it's like even sugar consumption is going to go up because population is increasing. I feel as we need to focus on our agricultural development. We need to have more output per acre because today India produces almost 30-40 tons of cane per acre, which I think Brazil and other countries have more. So I think we should focus on increasing our yields, agriculture outputs. Another challenge is, I know like all the distilleries who are producing ethanol have to have CO2 capture. What is the technology available for CO2 capture? Do we have readiness for CO2 utilization, CO2 transportation? I think CO2 market is very limited. So how are we going to deal with this CO2? It's the challenge. And other few challenges which Mr. Roshan already explained, like infrastructure. So my material which goes from one state to other, then you have denaturant, who is controlling whether denaturant is added. It's absolutely like it's a lot of things which we need to be very, very careful as we are expanding ourselves. Because I think still oil companies, OMCs are not bothered about whether the denatured is tested. They just need certificate. I think we have to have controls. These are very important, and our focus in developing technologies for 2G ethanol, because that's the future if we want to increase and go forward. So these are the few things apart from what Mr. Roshan already added, I would like to add. Yeah, and also one more point, the time required for all statutory approvals, it has reduced, but it is still a long way to go. Yeah, thank you.
Avinashji, your views?
You're on mute. I could not hear. Sorry.
Yeah, Avinashji, your views?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear him, ma'am. I don't know. You're not
Okay.
able to hear him.
Okay, I can hear everybody else. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, you can hear me, right? So that's
Yes,
fine.
we did hear you. Thank you, Mr. Praveen Prashant. As correctly pointed out by both Dr. Sangeeta Srivastav and my friend Roshan Lal Tamak, is that you have to now understand the demand and supply situation in the country. Currently, we are so happy that we have moved from 2% of ethanol blending about 5 years back to 10% in 2022. I would say it was easier to do that. But the path from here to achieve 20% is going to be extremely challenging, extremely difficult at the same time. So if I talk about the supply side, as correctly mentioned by Mr. Tamak, is we have to look both from the point of view of the production capacity in the country to produce ethanol, as well as the availability of feedstock. Now, availability of feedstock, my friends mentioned about the sugarcane side. Now, as mentioned by you, we have gone into a grain-based distillery, the first greenfield grain-based distillery in the country in Bihar. So when you talk about feedstock, you need to understand that a grain-based ethanol plant requires something like rice husk or fuel, which is not very easy to get as compared to the sugar industry, which has its own house bagasse generation. Secondly, the feedstock regarding the grain is rice or maize, which again, in the current situation are highly priced. So that's another challenging aspect there. As concerns the sugar industry, they certainly have a very, very big advantage as concerns the fuel, because the sugar industry has its own in-house bagasse, and therefore I see a lot of future in the sugar industry developing more and more capacity to produce ethanol as compared to the grain-based. Grain-based will be very few and may not really challenge the sugar industry as far as Indian ethanol program is concerned. But let me assure you that India has a lot of feedstock. As mentioned by Dr. Sangeeta Srivastav, let me just give the example of maize in India or corn in India. The productivity per hectare of maize in India is just about 3 tons per hectare, which is probably the lowest in the world. The world average is about 6 tons per hectare. At 3 tons per hectare of maize, India produces almost about 28 million tons of maize. Now, if we increase that to even 5 tons per hectare, which a neighboring country like Pakistan is able to achieve, and I don't think that should be very, very difficult, because I don't think the government of India or the state governments or the investors or the users of maize have really invested in developing maize as a seed or developing maize to improve the yields. So if we increase that 3 tons to 5 tons, we increase the production from 28 million tons of maize to 45 million tons of maize. And that about 25 million tons of extra maize can take care of almost the extra ethanol that we require from the grain-based ethanol sector in the country, in addition to the sugar industry. Now, the sugar industry in India has also caught on to the idea, and they have realized that during the season, they can use sugarcane as the raw material to produce ethanol. And during the off season, they can use maize or rice and increase their capacity. And that is what is happening in the country. A lot of the sugar millers, a lot of the sugar companies are now investing heavily in dual feed ethanol production. During season, use sugarcane. During off season, use rice or maize to produce ethanol. And therefore, I very sincerely and very firmly believe that by 2025, the requirement of production capacity in the country to produce the required about 10 billion liters of ethanol for that 20% ethanol blending across the country should be achieved very comfortably, both from the sugar industry side and partially from the grain-based side. Now, where is the challenge? The challenge really is on the demand side. And I would break the demand side into 2 parts. As my friend mentioned about the transporting the ethanol across the country. Currently, we are transporting almost all the ethanol by trucks, by road. That cannot happen if we are going to double the quantity of production or the movement of ethanol across the country. We will need to use the railway network. We will need to create hubs or dumps of the oil companies where small manufacturers of ethanol can supply their ethanol, and then the OMCs can carry that ethanol across the country. We need to develop pipelines to move the ethanol to reduce the cost of transportation of ethanol from the surplus ethanol producing states to the deficit states. So the distribution of ethanol on the demand side needs to improve, which includes infrastructure, which includes storage capacities, so that we do not face the challenge that we are, as suppliers, we are there to produce. We have the production capacity by 2025, but we do not have enough distribution or offtake by the oil companies. So, but that is happening, as mentioned by Mr. Tamak, that is already happening. The real challenge, and that I think the government is working on, and they need to very seriously work on, if we are going to achieve anything closer to 20% by 2025 or 2026, is the demand of ethanol. All the current vehicles which are running on the road, including the two-wheelers, and two-wheelers constitute for almost 2/3 of the demand for petrol in the country. So if we are going to do that, we need to, the current vehicles can take 10% ethanol blending, 10% ethanol without any changes in their engines, without any challenges to their rubber parts or the plastics, because up to 10%, the ethanol doesn't create any problem in your engines. But once you cross that 10%, say, once you cross the 13%, and I think there is a study done by Government of India, that once you cross 13%, then the challenges come up as far as the plastics or the rubber parts or the efficiency or the fuel efficiency of the vehicles are concerned. That's why I said when we were moving from 2% to 10% ethanol blending, it was not as difficult. But now that we move from 10% to 20%, we will need enough vehicles, both two-wheelers as well as four-wheelers in the country, which can take up to 20% ethanol blended petrol without any difficulties. We will also need to have the flex fuel vehicles, which can take almost up to 100% ethanol. And only if we do that, will the demand grow to 20% ethanol blending by 2025. I will come back later, if you give me a chance, to talk about flex fuel vehicles and how the demand on the by the vehicles are going to change over the next 3 years and what we need to do that. But my immediate reaction on the challenges were this only. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just a small supplementary question is, out of that 10 billion that you are talking about, any ratio with respect to sugarcane versus grain?
See, the Niti Aayog has done a very detailed study, and they came out with a report in June 2021. And they talked about a total demand of about 14 billion liters of alcohol as well as ethanol to take care of all the requirements, including by the potable alcohol sector or the chemical sector. And they projected that 10 billion liters will come from, will be required by the ethanol sector, balance 4 billion liters by the other two sectors, chemical as well as the potable sector. And they said that almost 50%, 45 to 50% of that will come from the grain-based ethanol sector, and 50 to 55% will come from the sugar industry. My personal view is, as we move forward, the sugar industry's contribution will be more, because I mentioned about the fuel. Fuel is the real challenge with the grain-based sector. Fuel means rice husk or wood chips or sawdust or whatever they're going to use. That is the real challenge for the grain-based. And therefore, even though Niti Aayog talks about a 50-50 share by 2025, but I personally feel that it will be more towards the sugar industry by 2025. They'll have a better contribution or a higher contribution as compared to grain-based.
Thank you, Avinashji. Welcome, Vilin Phatkeji. We had the first, so I would request if you can give your initial 60 seconds for ethanol biofuel energy of the future. And then the second part was the challenges in achieving 20% ethanol blending by 2025. So if you can take the two questions simultaneously. So over to
sure.
Mr.
Thanks. Yeah, sure. Thank you, Praveen. See, as regards my initial 60 seconds, yes, oil companies are geared up. And the very fact that we have gone from 2% to 10%, as Avinashji mentioned just now, shows that on the oil company side, there is a complete preparedness to go up to 20%. And the kind of challenges that we have in this country are that ethanol was produced only in Maharashtra, UP, Karnataka, largely through sugar molasses route. And the challenge was to make ethanol available across the country, because petrol is sold in nook and corner of the country. And therefore, the oil companies have made arrangements to procure this ethanol and move it to different parts of the country and make it available. So therefore, as regards to achieving 10%, it has not been difficult. I agree fully with Avinash. The real challenge is to go from 10 to 20. Now coming to your the question, yes. See, the 10 to 20%, there are challenges twofold. One is, of course, the demand side. The other is supply side. The supply side challenges, I'm pretty sure that with the kind of capacity that are coming up by 2025, another 300, 400 crore liters will definitely come up. And that is what you require, frankly, because not all vehicles are going to demand 20% from 2025. It's only the on-road vehicles will require the 10%. The what scenario I see is that from 2025, you will have a scenario where the existing vehicles will take 10%. Some will take even 12, 13, depending on whether the flex fuel has been introduced by that time. And the new vehicles which come can take 20%, or as per the flex fuel norm, it can take any quantity. But that quantity, since the number of vehicles will be less, the quantity will be less. Therefore, India's requirement will be only in the region of 12, 13% in 2020-25. And I think only as we go towards 2030 that we will gradually see the percentage in India going up to 2020. So you'll have two kinds of fuel being dispensed at the retail outlet from 25 onwards. One is 10%, other could be a flex fuel percentage, which the oil companies will have to modify their dispensing equipments and things like that. The second point is the movement of the product. Yes, oil companies have increased their storage, their internal storage at various locations, and therefore they can take care of the minor swings in the supply. But at the same time, I understand even the ethanol manufacturers are improving their storage capacities. And with the grain-based plants coming up in various states, the challenges to the transportation which exist today will not be there to that extent. Yes, the pipeline are being tried by the oil marketing companies, I am told, and we have a huge pipeline network in the country among all the oil marketing companies. And therefore, once the ethanol blended fuel starts moving through the pipelines, I think we will have overcome a lot of resistance as far as the 20% blending is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Milinji. Professor Goncalves, you heard all the speakers with respect to 10% moving to 20% and the challenges that the country can face. Your country has already moved to more than 20%. So what were those challenges and how did you overcome them, if you can share with us? Or if you can talk about even other countries or other international examples.
Yeah. Initially, I would say that this is not a problem. This is actually a huge opportunity, in my opinion. First of all, I have seen, for example, in Thailand, that the tank station, the fuel stations have a number of different options for fuel. For example, we can have in India, please, this is just suggestion, I'm not a policymaker. But anyway, what I see, we could have, for example, pumps with 10% ethanol and pumps with 20% ethanol, with a price policy that this with 20% ethanol would be cheaper than with 10% that would be the regular fuel. On the other side, the automobile industry should have incentives in order to produce cars with the possibility to utilize 20% ethanol. This was exactly what we did in Brazil. In order to have ethanol cars in the past, they were cheaper, less tax, and in few years, practically 100% of the industry were producing cars moved by ethanol. On the other side, what people said about transportation, I agree. However, I think this is a huge opportunity, and I agree totally that the challenge would be increase productivity for the short term. For example, Brazil, it was unbelievable what people did in Brazil with maize. From zero, we are going to reach this year, I believe, 6 billion. Until 2025, 9 billion liters from zero, less than 10 years ago. That means I see in the India similar opportunities with increasing productivity. Again, the advantage of the biomass in comparison, for example, with eolic and solar, that it creates a lot of job for countries like Brazil and India that need jobs. It's enormous opportunity. And I'm speaking a lot with Dr. Samir Somaya about a new kind of biomass. For example, for India, energy cane, it's a necessity, in my view. And a second biomass is agave. This is Mexican plant that makes tequila in Mexico. The difference is that it takes 5 years to have the first harvest. However, productivity is similar to sugarcane without need of irrigation or special nutrition. This is, in my opinion, the medium-term future to fit the need to meet the need of the India demand for ethanol. But I see only opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Talking about development in flex fuel technology, you have a lot of experience. So if you can talk about how this can be worked in India, as everybody was talking that from 13 to 14%, as we increase further, there would be problem with the engine part of it. So the engine has to be fine-tuned or it has to be redesigned accordingly. So your views, sir, Professor Goncalves.
Yeah, I don't see. You have these special autos, these small autos that are very frequent in India, and I'm not sure about this specific small autos. But normally, from 10 to 20 is not a big deal. Are only few components that should be changed in order to resist to this combustion and all the process. It's really not a big deal, and it was a surprise in Brazil when the automobile industry have seen this, because at that time everybody believed that ethanol would not be properly mixed with. However, it's not the case. It's not the case. I don't see big challenge from 10 to 20. And if I would suggest a company to help in this development, would be Bosch, a German company that is present in India for sure. They have a lot of experience in this transformation and the development of specific components. Then from 20 to flex, and Brazil is the only country where we have real flex fuel. You can go from 0 to 100% ethanol, and the driver cannot note any difference. Then you need to have more technology. Our specific projects, mainly the electronic parts that have developed a lot, in order for the motor make the equilibrium, make the compensations when you have one or the other. Again, for India, I think this is a huge opportunity initially to go to the flex fuel and hybrid cars moved by ethanol. We are finishing now a research. We are going to the publication in the next 2 weeks. The hybrid car by ethanol is by far the most sustainable, energy efficient automobile in the world. This is the best composition. Hybrid car utilizing ethanol or even biogas. That is another opportunity for the Indian mills. And then we go in the future to the fuel cell. This is how I see this roadmap for the future, for a brilliant future for countries like India and Brazil, which have the opportunity to have biofuel in big volumes.
Roshanji, your views on this? Any additional input?
Yeah, so basically just taking it forward what Professor Goncalo has just mentioned. I think we all know that Brazil has taken about 50 years to develop this program. And now this is a very, very mature program which can be emulated. The only requirement is that how can we effectively and quickly replicate Brazilian model in India by working on all fronts, right from, as Avinash has mentioned about distribution, storage, pipe, all this transportation policy framework. Besides that, what is required, that government to government collaboration and industry to industry collaboration. There has been some developments, positive developments, but an effective interface is required so that the learnings of Brazil can be replicated quickly in India to make it a success. And this is again a win-win for the entire, all stakeholders, rather everybody will be benefited. And it will be a roadmap, it will be a pathway to sustainable global sugar sector. So, and farmers will be benefited, environment concerns will be addressed, and everything, every stakeholder will be benefited. So the larger point which I want to make, that some effective interface needs to be put into place between Brazil and India at all levels. And as Avinash has mentioned in very detail, that on automobile sector, we need to work very actively, very closely, so that the consumption part is taken care and we don't face any challenge on that part.
Sir, your views?
So you asked me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm Mr. Han. Yes, on the FFVs, I think I'm a very, very big votary of flex fuel vehicles in India. And why is that? Let me give you some statistics, some data. The government of India has said all the new two-wheelers and four-wheelers which would be produced from April 2023 have to be 20% ethanol blended fuel compliant. So all the vehicles which come from April 23 will be E20 compliant. And the statistics say that almost 8 to 9% of the vehicles on the road get replaced every year. So over a period of 3 years between 2023 to 2025-26, you will replace almost a quarter of the E10 vehicles by E20 vehicles. So as mentioned by Mr. Padke, by 25-26, you will have 25% of the vehicles which can take E20 fuel and 75% of the vehicles which can take E10 as per the current planning, as per the current suggestions. Therefore, by 2025 or 2026, you will not be able to achieve the 20% ethanol blended target across the country because the vehicles are not ready to take more than 20%, not more than 25% of the vehicles would be ready to take it. Therefore, we need to introduce flex fuel vehicles as soon as possible because they suddenly increase the consumption to 80% or 100% straight away. So if you have, say, 20% or even 15% of the vehicles which are FFVs by 25-26, which can take 80% ethanol and run at 80-20 combination, you are getting closer to 20% ethanol blended fuel by 2025. Now, what are the challenges? Why the automobile sector is not jumping in and producing FFVs very, very quickly? The biggest challenge is that India is one of the few countries in the world which has a BS6 emission standards. If I ask Professor, the professor from Brazil, we know that Brazil has a BS4 emission standards, and therefore the cost of these vehicles would be lower to the vehicles which will be compliant with BS6. And therefore the same multinational companies, multinational automobile manufacturers which produce BS6 FFVs will be producing BS4 FFVs will be producing BS6 FFVs in India at a higher price. Now, what should the government do? I'm not saying that the government should reduce the BS6 standards. They should relook at the whole thing and ensure that the costing part is taken care of. Because finally, at the end of the day, even if the manufacturers of these vehicles produce FFVs, there will be no takers because it's going to be too costly. Therefore, if the government of India is giving a major incentive to EVs, electric vehicles, why cannot the same provision be given to the flex fuel vehicles? The EVs today have a GST, and correct me if I'm wrong, of 5% only, whereas an ordinary vehicle is taxed at anywhere between 36 to 40%. Even if we give an incentive, even if we don't include flex fuel vehicle in the production linked incentive which has been provided for EVs or hydrogen fuel vehicles, we can still take care by reducing that GST on such vehicles, such FFVs, and then you will see the automobile manufacturers jumping in. Professor also talked about hybrids. Again, I'm a big votary of hybrids. When you have flex fuel vehicles, you can very easily use those as hybrids, ethanol with the battery hybrid. Now, these battery hybrids, personally, I have a Toyota Camry for the last 7 years, and it has a battery at the back, at the dicky, at the boot, which has not been replaced for the last 7 years. When I start my engine, it is totally soundless. I have to check whether my engine has started. It is that soundless. Till about 40 kilometers per hour speed, the vehicle runs on that battery, and beyond that, it runs on petrol today. I had been to the Toyota factory in Bangalore. They have already developed the new prototype, new Camry, which can run on the battery till about 70 kilometers per hour. That means a Camry running in the city will be pure EV. And mind it, these EVs are not plug-in EVs. These are chargeable when the car or the vehicle runs on the road. When you brake your vehicle, it is charged. And therefore, for the last 7 years, I have not had a single problem. I've had to change my lead acid battery in the front, which starts the engine, twice in the last 7 years, but not this battery in the back. Secondly, and very importantly, very few people would know, I'm sure a lot of people hearing me would not know this fact. An electric vehicle requires a big battery, and that has to be charged by plug-in. Whereas a hybrid vehicle requires a smaller battery size. 30 hybrids can be made from the same quantity of battery which is used to make one EV. India is short of the metals. India doesn't have enough battery metals to make. Therefore, India will be importing all those batteries either from Argentina or Congo or Chile or other countries. We do not have metals like lithium, or we don't have graphite, we don't have nickel, we don't have these metals, rare metals. And therefore, if India has to make EVs, we will be import dependent. What I'm also trying to say, in addition to what Professor said, that hybrid, ethanol battery hybrid is the least polluting vehicle in the world, even as compared to EVs, as well as the fact that 30 such hybrids can be manufactured from the same battery that manufactures one EV. I rest my case there. That is what I wanted to talk about FFVs. Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Milinji, any additions to the flex engine point that we are discussing, and then to
not really. I think Avinash has covered in detail, so it would be a repetition if I say anything. Yeah.
Sangeeta ma'am.
Yeah, same as from my side. I only said it requires a kind of a collaborative approach to resolve these issues, which could be technology for EV or FFV or like developing your 2G. So it's like my point is like collective approach to resolve this, because demand, supply, incentives. These are the three things which will take this forward. So we must focus on demand, supply, and the incentive to make this happen by 2020. Yeah.
So now we move to R&D adaptation required if we are planning to move from E20 to now to E100, or say slab wise 30, 40, 50. So then what's the modification that is required? Let me start with Avinashi and then move to others.
Yeah, I probably am not the right person. I think Dr. Sangeeta Srivastava or Professor are the right person on the R&D side, but I can only, as a user or as a person who's been involved in advocacy on this side, is the fact that what I understand is when you increase the quantum of ethanol in the fuel that you use in vehicles, you have to have an intelligent, if you have the ICE vehicles, you have to have an intelligent chip which can actually detect how much of ethanol and how much of petrol or gasoline is coming in, so that it can draw extra or it can draw less of that quantity when it takes into. So we need to develop those chips in India. Secondly, I would suggest that it's a domain of the oil companies, because if we give them 3 or 4 kinds of blends to be sold at the retail pumps, it's going to be a challenge. And therefore, they need to research, they need to find out how they can have 2 pumps and how they can blend different levels when it actually is filled up in the vehicles. These are there in Brazil and in US. I'm sure we can learn from there.
Milinji, your views?
Yeah, it's, as far as the dispensing is concerned, that is a challenge. There is a possibility. We used to do some point in time where 2T oil used to go along with petrol, and similarly, the metering equipments can be there in place. We need not really transport the blended fuel, but the blending can be done at site at the dispensing unit. So that's one thing that will definitely happen. So on the vehicle front, I don't see much challenge now, but I think as more and more I keep thinking about the E20s and the requirement folding up, I think the challenge would still remain on all the plants which are coming up and they are in the pipeline, and they have to come up, as per the requirement. The capacities that we are talking about, the initial 300, 400 crore liters, I can see coming up, but then beyond that, to what extent the policy initiatives will help us to really put up the plants based on the grain, especially the rice and maize. I think that remains to be seen. But otherwise, 25, 26, I don't see any challenge in availability of the ethanol.
Rostanji, your views?
No, responding to what Mr. Patke has mentioned. So capacity creation is taking place both on the sugar side as well as on grain side. And here again, I would like to congratulate the efforts of Government of India, that they have come with this interest subvention scheme, which is supporting the sector, both the sectors. And there's a good scheme and a lot of capacity is coming up. But in the times to come, as Avinash has mentioned, that certainly we need to see that what will happen to particularly to grain sector, what will happen to the feedstock availability and the fuel situation for use in boiler. So those are the 2 challenges there. But sugarcane sector, particularly in view of the current production situation, sugarcane production situation in the country, sugar industry is well placed to fill this gap very quickly. And in sugar sector also, we are developing this flexibility of multiple feedstock, grain also, juice also, molasses also. So that will certainly help in accelerating this program. So it is a evolving sector, but we need to work very actively on this. Particularly, we discussed about this changes in automobile sector. So that is the larger area, and I think this requires the focus and close coordination and collaboration amongst all stakeholders.
Sangeeta ma'am, your views?
So as I've been in the R&D, but the other side of R&D where it's product development and the biofuel side and sugar side. But what I see is, as Professor also mentioned, this has been already done in some part of the world, right? So Brazil is already operating E27 and you have E100 hydrous ethanol and blended other things. So why I think it's a time to adopt to those changes which R&D is already being done. Take it from there, get it customized to our requirement and move forward rather than redoing the whole thing here. And also second part which I see is most of the places when you see these vehicles are more expensive than the normal ones, then here we should get some incentives from the government so that people adopt to this and they start using it. And these are the few points which I wanted to highlight because the research on automobile is a different kind of research. And my point is, why do we reinvent the wheel? Let's adopt to what has been already done by other part of the world. Yeah, thank you.
Professor Goncalo, your views on how do we move from E20 to E100?
Initially, let me say the following in order to be clear. I think that electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles, is a crazy thing. I don't want to let any kind of doubt about this. I think that's the worst decision of our civilization in terms of future. We have seen, for example, in Brazil, Ford, a big company that was in Brazil for over 50 years, that has decided to go to electric and immediately closed the industry here in Brazil from one day to the other. A big number of unemployed people. It was really a tragic thing. And this will be the future of the industry if we agree with the BAV that Dr. Verma has already explained the consequences. For example, you are going to move from a lot of crises, geopolitical crises that come from the oil industry to the metal industry. We will change nothing. For example, a flex car in Brazil today is much more sustainable than the electric vehicle in Europe in 20 years' time. That means we are not looking for a solution. We just need to recognize the solution that we have. Countries like Brazil and India have a huge advantage at this moment because we can create an industry that comes from the fields, producing jobs with low, let's say, for the less educated people, to the frontier of the human knowledge with the fuel cell that can convert biofuel in electricity in a much more effective way. And India has an amazing technological industry that can create this kind of solutions for the world. Because look, the most populated countries in the world in 2011 will be in Africa. Africa is plenty of opportunities to produce biofuel for the world. Since we have fuel cell for everybody in the world, we have enormous solutions for the population explosion that the world is going to see. Then, Mr. Prashant, I don't see big problems in going from 10 to 20. Our logistic equations to be solved, no big deal. I do think that India should go immediately to the flex fuel in collaboration with Brazil. I'm sure that the Brazilian industry is very, very keen in the connection with India, which is a strategic partner, very important one. And for the mills, enormous opportunity. I'm very proud. We are developing our lab new yeasts for the Indian fermentation. It's a process different from ours, but that we believe that with the yeast that we have, with small modifications, we can produce high performance yeast for the Indian industry. And I see in the biogas, for example, biogas is enormous opportunity. I don't know how is the biogas industry in India. And after you make the production of the biogas from the vinasse become a fertilizer. A fertilizer, you don't need to concentrate to throw away. On the contrary, it's a very important fertilizer. I see a lot of opportunities.
And you are also coining the word bioelectrification. What do you mean by that?
We have the wrong idea that only when we have a cable, we have electricity. When we see biomass, what is biomass? Biomass is a battery of CO2 because you have CO2 chains that are charged by electrons that come from the photons. And then you have sugar. Sugar is a battery. Sugar is a battery, a solid one. Then we have the opportunity to transform the solid battery in a liquid battery. If you think carefully, oil becomes the most important thing in society because it is liquid and has replaced coal because coal is solid. Okay. With the fuel cell, we have the opportunity to have the electrons that you have in the biofuel and convert this in electricity instead of convert this by combustion in heat. That's where the technology is. This is what, in my opinion, should be an obsession for the Indian and Brazilian industry, because this is a game changer. For example, Nissan in 2016 brought to Brazil a prototype. In this prototype, with a 30 liters ethanol tank, the vehicle was able to run over 600 kilometers. Look, this 30-liter ethanol tank is a battery, an extraordinary battery that in order to make 600 kilometers in a car like this, you should have 1.2 tons metallic battery. Dr. Prashant, this is a huge opportunity. And in India, we have the intelligence, the correct industry, automobile industry, possibility to produce biofuel. And then let me insist just on one point, actually two. Priorities, in my opinion, biomass, energy cane, and agave. As I said, Dr. Samir Somaya is already looking at this possibility. Second generation ethanol is the second thing that we should really look carefully. And third, biogas. Biogas.
Thank you, sir. So moving ahead in 2025, do we need another policy intervention? Let me have everybody's view, starting with Avinash. So we are looking at if we are looking at future, and with capacities, more capacities coming in 2022, 23 is what we are expecting. And because if these capacities are coming in, definitely we will have to support our farmers. And if we want to support our farmers, that means we need to have a new policy intervention, because the present policy intervention is till E20 as such. But later on, there are a lot of modifications, as you talked about the engine, then about the blending part of it. So there are a lot of complications which will arise as we move forward. So how will these be taken care, and what policy interventions is required moving forward?
Let me answer that in two parts. One, as I already mentioned, the policy interventions which are required as far as flex fuel vehicles are concerned, or some changes at the retail pumps to distribute your pure ethanol plus the E10 or E20, whatever percentage you have, has to be done immediately. We cannot wait till 2025. If we are going to wait till 2025, and as Mr. Milind Phadke mentioned, we will not be doing even say 30 or 35, I'm sorry, about say 15 or 16% of ethanol blending with petrol by that time. So we will fall short of our target. So first, I would say that we need to have a policy intervention immediately, give incentives, give subsidies, give tax reductions, or whatever to attract FFVs, and then very quickly move on to hybrids thereof. And that can really take care of the challenge that EVs are facing as far as plugins are facing. See, EVs, you can actually develop a lot of your charging points, charging stations in tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities. But India cannot afford to have such charging stations in tier 3 cities or 4 cities or smaller cities. You cannot even think of having battery swapping. We are talking about shortage of metals. And then there is a talk to have double the number of batteries in the country. Half of them will be unutilized, waiting for somebody to take it or for replacement. So that is not, I don't think that's a sustainable policy. So first is immediate policy intervention on FFVs and then hybrids. Second policy intervention, I would believe, will have to come if we achieve 20% by 25 or 26. Once we do that, then we should look at increasing the blend percentages. I'm not talking about doing again that E20 or E25. See, as it is, we are moving a very difficult path from here to 2025. Next year, the target is to do E12. Then you have a target of E15. Then you have a target of E20. I mean, you see the complications in the various stages, no? So you have the oil companies somewhere in one part of the country will be doing E12, some part of the country will be doing E15, some part will be doing E20. So a lot of complications to a consumer, to a user of these blend percentages. So my suggestion is once you do flex fuel vehicles, then don't bother. They can decide to take 12% or 15% or 80% or 100%. Then the oil companies don't have the botheration of doing different blend sales at their petrol pumps. So I would say if we have reached by 2025, we have achieved that 20%, then we should talk about increasing the blend percentages, not as far as the sale of those percentages are concerned, but increase the sale of pure ethanol across the country, and also move that E20 to E27 or E25 like Brazil does. For example, and Professor knows better than me, Brazil has an average sale of the ratio of petrol or gasoline or ethanol sale is 53% gasoline and 47% ethanol is the average of Brazil. If you talk about the state of Sao Paulo, and correct me if I'm wrong, Professor, it is something like 67% ethanol and only 33% petrol there. So policy intervention, policy direction, or incentives by 2025-26 should be looking at those percentages. I would then believe that the incentivizing or subsidizing policy should come for the consumption side, for the demand side. Because we see the production capacity is growing, there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of excitement, but the excitement will die down in the next couple of years if we don't find buyers.
So is ethanol producers organizations working on this, that they are asking government to go for flex fuel? Is there any white paper, or we are still a long way to go?
No, there is a very serious discussion already in the government. And as I mentioned, the challenge is more on the BS6 and BS4. You must have heard the Honorable Transport Minister, Mr. Gadkari, regularly talking about FFVs. But the challenge is coming up from that point of view because the cost of the FFVs will be higher. Then how do you make it affordable for a consumer? At the end of the day, most of the consumers are more concerned about their own pockets than the bigger social benefit of environment and pollution, etc. So we'll have to take care of the pricing of these vehicles also.
Sir, just for our clarification and for our delegate clarification, if you go for, say, ethanol blended fuel, and whether we go for BS4 or BS6, does it matter, or there can be a flexible approach to these kind of vehicles and then pure play petrol vehicle or CNG vehicle?
As per my understanding is there is an Honorable Supreme Court's order that all the vehicles in India have to be BS6 compliant. I think Mr. Phadke will be a better person to really advise us on that.
Phadke, sir, your views, sir?
Yeah.
On policy.
Yeah,
policy.
Yeah, he is right. All vehicles have to be BS6. India has graduated in 2020 April to BS6, and all refineries in India are producing BS6 fuel today. So there is no question of going back to BS4. That's one. There are a couple of things I wish to add. I have a slight difference of opinion with respect to Mr. Avinash Sharma on one, that, as regards the engine compatibility is concerned, India is not ready yet. So therefore, going for a higher blend percentage than 10% currently is not possible. Maybe up to 11, 12, that's all. But if you ask the automobile companies, they will definitely tell you that the current engines, that is what is produced in India from 2008 onwards, are only compatible for 10%. At the most, they can go up to 12, 13%, not more than that. And therefore, we have to wait for 2023 when the new vehicles with new engine technology or the flex fuel vehicles will come. And therefore, I see it very difficult, going forward till the new engines, compatible vehicles or the flex fuel vehicles are launched. We will really improve the, the blend percentages from the consumer perspective. The consumers will only do what the what the automobile companies tell them to do, and the automobile companies are always selling their vehicles based on the mileage that the car gives, and therefore the mileage gets compromised in case of E10, which they would not like, and therefore unless the new engine technology comes, it will be very difficult for us to really achieve the high percentages. That's one thing. This is one challenge the automobile companies have, and therefore largely it will depend on them what is their readiness to accept the higher blend percentages in India. I agree all that what Brazil is doing and which should be done in India, but I am only saying the time for that, at least I am not seeing right now, unless there are subsequent policy interventions on that side. The second thing I think is the plant capacities which are coming up. As I said again, the plant capacities 300, 400 crore liters will definitely come. The extra sugar syrup, instead of making sugar, will get into ethanol. All that is going to happen, and therefore that is not a worry. But I think there are a whole lot of other things which, in my opinion, we need to touch. Something like reviving the old sugar mills. I know the market forces will play its own role, but can something be done from the policy intervention side, whether the existing national assets, which are directly or indirectly national assets, can be revived, existing sugar industries or the existing grain-based industries, can they be converted into dual fuel and all that? Rather than putting up an entirely new greenfield plants, can we put up more and more such as brownfield plants? I think the overall policy may be also there in this direction, where the capacities can come up very, very fast. And third, of course, yes, hybrid vehicles. I fully grant that. I think hybrid vehicle is the solution. I don't think EV is the solution for this country. EV will come mainly in two-wheeler industry. That's fine. But I think as far as the four-wheelers are concerned, I think we are looking at a hybrid industry. We're looking at a biogas and future ethanol fuel cells also.
Sanjeev, your views?
Yeah. Okay. No, I really I need not to add much more. Avinashji and Mr. Phadke has already elaborated, but the focus area remains that how the automobile industry responds to it, and how policy interventions make it happen. So this is the crux of the whole thing. On the supply side, as everybody has mentioned, I don't see really any challenge. So, and the last point which I would like to make, that let's learn what Brazil has done and quickly replicate it into India. That's all.
Thank you, Roshanji. Sangeetam, do you see, suppose if this intervention does not happen, do we see ethanol moving to the chemical sector? Because that's another approach which needs to be taken so that there is no wastage of ethanol, and if it can be used for producing different chemicals, it will be definitely be useful and the farmers can benefit from the whole ecosystem. Your views, ma'am.
Absolutely, you're right, because today India is net importer of ethanol. So we import almost whatever we produce, equal amount is coming in India. So in case something happens or the production is higher, I think we can still substitute that from importing it. And a lot of chemicals are manufactured today. Ethanol prices are impacting our specialty chemical businesses in the country. All the chemical prices are going up because of ethanol prices, and we can make our country self-sufficient on ethanol front for a specialty chemical. That is also possible. So, but what I feel is policy intervention or the next biofuel policy will be required if we want to increase this, because this particular the aspect is not only about ethanol, it is about energy security and also kind of our future where we want to reduce our greenhouse emission. So all those things need this to bring everybody on the same page, which cannot be done by one or two institutes. It needs the policy decision and the government to be in the center to make everybody move in the same direction. So that's why I feel that intervention will be required. And otherwise, if it doesn't happen, ethanol can make country self-sufficient also. So.
And you are also working on some R&D with respect to ethanol-based products in your lab. So any update on that?
30 chemicals as on today also from ethanol. And I can say like today we supply 7 crore liter of ethanol for biofuel program, equal amount of ethanol we import and make the chemicals. So in case biofuel program doesn't come, we should be able to use our ethanol for all the chemicals. So that's, we are self-sufficient and we're not dependent on the policies. Yeah.
And the price that you would be procuring is sufficient enough to take care or
yeah, at the current level, if you look at last 6-7 months, the ethanol prices have gone high, so it can compensate. So looking at the current situation, it gives us two things. It's like visibility of our feedstock availability and its price, as well as not dependency on imported price. But the current situation is the ethanol import prices are all very high, 10% higher than our ethanol price in the country.
Professor Goncalves, your last views. We have come to the end of the program. So your views.
I think that one very important point that we have not touched here yet is the carbon credit, the carbon price for the sector. For example, I made a very, very simple calculation. Maybe some numbers are not very accurate, but 1 ton of cane, of sugar cane, makes around 70 to 85 liters of ethanol. When we produce 600 liters of ethanol, more or less, you avoid the emission of 1 ton of CO2. Okay? 1 ton of CO2 in markets like California, even Europe, the value of 1 ton of CO2 avoided is around $200. Around $200. Look, if 1 ton makes around 70 to 85 liters, 10 tons of sugarcane, 10 tons of sugarcane, that in Brazil, the value is around $200, is the same that you can get selling carbon credits. That means for the agricultors, for the people that is making the sugarcane plantation and harvesting, in my opinion, a policy for carbon credit is essential and immediate because you don't need to change. You have a very important vector to improve productivity because the more you produce, the more carbon credit you have. That means you don't need to let's say, handle very much with the details of the policies because we know it's very difficult to change. It needs a lot of people. And you have an immediate input of a lot of money equivalent to the money that you can have with the physical production in benefit of the agricultures. That's my view. Very important point, the carbon credit policy.
I think it was a really interesting and what we can say, very, very interesting discussion. And I think every panelist added their very different perspective. I think the audience would have also loved it. Many thanks to all our panelists, Dr. Sangeeta Srivastava, Executive Director, Godavari Biorefineries Limited, Mr. Roshan Lal Tamak, Executive Director, CEO, Sugar Business, DCM Shriram Limited, Mr. Avinash Verma, Promoter, Eastern India Biofuels Private Limited, Professor Goncalo Pereira, Full Professor and Coordinator, Genomics and Bioenergy Laboratory, Unicamp from Brazil, Mr. Milinda Spatke, President, Biofuels, GPS Renewables Private Limited. Sorry, sir, we had to wake you up early morning, 4:30 to attend to this.
My pleasure. Yeah.
But it was really a pleasure to hear from you. So we got oil industry perspective, a sugar industry perspective, a grain-based perspective, an R&D perspective, and also a Brazil perspective. So in a nutshell, that 360-degree view. And with this, sir, we have our panel session has come to an end, achieving net carbon zero. We have also come to the end of this two-day wonderful 18 sessions that we had on different topics. So the two-day conference, ICN NextGen Chemicals and Petrochemical Summit has come to an end with this beautiful, what we can say, ethanol, biofuel, energy of the future. And he's also talked about carbon credit. So with this, we come to an end. And once again, many thanks. And it is a pleasure to talking to you all and gain a different perspective every time when we meet you. Once again, thanks and namaste and Jai Hind from Praveen Prashant. We will meet next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
When we do our next series of ICN NextGen Chemicals and Petrochemical Summit 2023. Till then, goodbye. And
Thank you.